We'll go ahead and get started. On behalf of Kenny and his family, I'd like to thank everybody for coming this afternoon. We have a few people that want to come up and make some comments about Lieutenant Landwehr. But for those of you that come to retirements, you know I have to review the files of the guilty people getting ready to leave. And so I pulled Kenny's file just to see if I could find some interesting stuff about him. Now this is Landwehr's file. Now you know that people that have been here 30 and 35 years have much thicker files, but there's a reason for that, and we'll get into it a little bit. But his file is generally, for a man of 35 years, pretty narrow, really. Kenny, the very first thing in the file, the very first thing, when you turn to the back of those, it generally has their hiring paperwork, maybe some high school or college transcripts, first contact interview stuff. But in Kenny's file, literally the very first piece of paper is a written reprimand from S.L. Brown. He was late to work in Recruit Academy by 5 minutes. He was supposed to be there at 7:45 and he showed up at 7:50, and it was a nasty reprimand. So that is the very first piece of paper. And then it had some more traditional stuff in it. His hire date. First of all, Kenny came to us. He graduated from a great and well-respected high school, Bishop Carroll High School. We slapped hands. He was leaving and I was coming in. He graduated in '72, went to Wichita State, took some college classes trying to decide what he wanted to be when he grew up. And I looked at his transcript, and what kind of student were you, Kenny, if we had to guess?
Bad.
Yeah. Yeah. He was not a good student. But he had 2 A's on his college report cards. One was in criminal justice, and another was in algebra. And I thought, well, that's very appropriate. He's calculating, and he's going to be a cop. So even at that early, tender age, 19, 20 years old, Kenny, his future was set for him. The only 2 A's he had on his whole report card. He graduated from the Wichita Police Dept Recruit Academy on January 27, 1979. He had guys in his class like Clark and Mormon, Leon. Deputy Chief Cornwell cut an order moving Kenny to the Adam 2 Bureau, second watch, that January. Went through the file, found his probationary evaluation from Lieutenant Bob Circle, signed by Captain Merle Nelson, and they described him as, quote, competent, willing to accept special assignments and work toward accomplishing a solution. And I thought that was very prophetic, too, that it kind of just described his career. In June of 1980, he did his first piece of investigative work, and I have a letter here from a citizen to Chief Lemunion. I don't know if you remember this or not, Chief, but it's from the Blues, Jack Blue and his wife. And I want to read just a piece of it because it's the very first case he ever solved, and he did it a lot faster than he did BTK. But it says, Dear Richard, I guess we always penned our letters to, that's how we addressed the Chief back in those days, right, Chief? Dear Richard, that wouldn't happen today, would it, Chief Williams, sir? Jack and I wish to share with you something that has happened to our family. Our 13-year-old son, Mike, had his bicycle stolen from him from Wilbur Junior High. We called the Adam 2 Division, and they sent an officer to our home. It was not just any officer. It was Officer K. Landwehr. He was so concerned about our son and his bike. He said he would look into a few places where the bike might be. Well, a few days passed, no bike, and our son was discouraged. Last evening, Officer Landwehr came to our home with, guess what? The bike. We had a very happy 13-year-old young man. Let's see. We can't begin to tell you the glad feelings that Officer Landwehr gave to all of us. We know a bike isn't a big item to be stolen with so many other items and things happening in our city, but to our son, his bike was very important. Our son knew Officer Landwehr would find his bike. And then there's another couple of paragraphs with just really heartfelt thanks to Kenny for his effort on that seemingly minor case. It was very moving. In January of '81, he received his first real evaluation from Lieutenant Arlen Smith, signed by Deputy Chief Coffey. They called Kenny, quote, an excellent investigator, an extreme interest in search and seizure, and does not like writing tickets. That didn't change much through the years either, did he? Excellent investigator, good search and seizure, didn't like writing traffic tickets. January of 81, he got his first life-saving letter. Him and Terry Nelson were at another officer's house, and Terry Nelson choked on some food, and Kenny saved his life. Terry Nelson wrote him up for that award. Awards committee said, thanks. Nothing. September of 81, gets better. September of 81, over at J.R. Davis's dad's house, eating. Somebody has a medical emergency. Kenny goes to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, try to resuscitate the guy. Ends up throwing up in Kenny's mouth and before EMS gets there. Got written up for that too. Got accommodation for that one. Didn't get nothing for Nelson. So, in the early 1980s, Kenny showed a special passion for the Special Olympics movement. In July of 84, he flew to Chicago to escort some athletes back to Wichita. Him and 3 or 4 other select officers got to do that. In July of 84, he was assigned, and this is what the special order says, assigned from the field to the chief's office, special assignment. No other details. Any kind of secret investigation, any kind of major investigation, Landwehr was there, and that's what this order basically said. In 1985, April, he was involved in the large-scale gambling operation, the wiretap. And for those of you who haven't had the joy of doing that, that's 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 7 days a week, no days off. And Kenny did that for 8 months. And that was a very successful investigation. In 1987, he was promoted to the rank of detective. In March of 1989, him and Terry Nelson were working on the Serena Patton murder case and ultimately arrested and charged Anthony Kelly. Judge David Kennedy, who is one of the finest judges that we ever got to testify in front of, said, quote, this is one of the finest examples of detective work I've ever seen in that case. He received thank you notes, Kenny received thank you notes from Mrs. Patton's mother and her boyfriend, that was Miss Patton. In June of 1989, Kenny was working on the Terry Manis homicide. He worked with Kansas City Metro PD, and they were investigating the actions of a suspect by the name of Richard Grissom. We suspected Mr. Grissom killed Manis, and he killed other women in the Kansas City area. And Kenny basically went on loan for 4 months with the Kansas City Metropolitan Police Department. He had a vacation schedule that year. It says to Nevada. I wonder where that would have been. Probably Vegas. Had already paid for a plane ticket, gave it up, didn't go, spent his own money, went to Kansas City and helped them with this case, 4 months. Somewhere during that process, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. In 1991, he was assigned to the laboratory as a CSI supervisor. On May 6th of 1992, and this reminds me of the point in the movie of Men in Black, when they call Will Smith in and tell him this is the last suit you're ever going to wear. Well, that was Kenny's day for the last suit he was ever going to wear. May 6th, 1992, he was transferred to homicide as lieutenant. And that was the last transfer he ever had in his file. Even in January of 1999, when the department went through a major overhaul, we moved almost every lieutenant except Kenny Landwehr. He stayed in homicide. This file, the remainder of that file, is full of letters from outside agencies, Topeka, Park City, Derby, Harvey County, Homewood, Alabama, some city in Oklahoma I can't pronounce, the FBI, the United States Attorney. All of these departments send him commendatory letters thanking him for helping investigate a case or doing something in Wichita to facilitate the investigations that they had going on in their own agencies. There are also many, many letters in that file from all kinds of schools and classrooms, because what you don't know about Kenny is he's an excellent instructor and an excellent teacher, and maybe many of you already know that. And there's just numerous letters in there about his ability to teach and convey a message across about crimes, and not just homicides, all crimes, all serious kinds of crimes. In August of '95, he was the City of Wichita Employee of the Month. I have no idea what you did to deserve that. He got a parking space in front that said Employee of the Month. Did you park your lieutenant's car in front of that? Is your city car in that space, probably?
That was when the garage was being rebuilt, so it was way out.
10 years later, he was the WPD Officer of the Year, and he was the Wichita Crime Commission Professional of the Year. In addition to the Grissom case, Kenny was involved, for as little a city as we are, has been involved in some amazing cases. BTK, Tiller murder, Nancy Shoemaker, and on and on. All total, he had his hands on over 600 murder investigations in the city of Wichita since 1992 that he directly touched. And that doesn't count what he does as a detective or outside agencies. So I have 2 awards to give Kenny today. First of all, it's my honor to give him his plaque, and then I have another little award to give him when that's finished. But first, let me give you your plaque, Kenny. 35 years of dedicated service, Wichita Police Department, Lieutenant Kenneth F. Landwehr, October 2nd, 1978 to May 4th, 2012. Thank you. For those of you who have never been on the 6th floor, of all the stuff on TV that talks and looks at cops, that's actually pretty accurate, the bullpen of detectives. Kenny, for years, from 1992 until about 2006, 2007, toiled in a little bitty tiny office with files and junk everywhere. I'm sorry, files and important police information everywhere. And every time the chief would come up for a homicide briefing, he would always be angry because we were all crammed in this little bit of office, and it was just very cumbersome to try to have a meeting involving 10 or 12 people with insufficient space. And so we knocked out a couple of walls, and we built Kenny a conference room attached to his office. And for a short period of time, actually about 4 years, Kenny had a bigger office than the chief of police. And I never let the chief forget that, actually. So what we wanted, and we've never done this before, but I just thought it would be nice to name that room after Kenny. And so we have created a plaque. It's not going to come out. I'll leave it in the plastic. But it's a thing we're going to hang on the wall down there. And Tim Ralph supplied me with a lot of Kennyisms, but this one says, "A voice for victims forever silenced." It's one of the things Kenny talked about. It says, "Lieutenant Kenneth Landwehr, conference room." And we'll hang it in the homicide conference room up on the 6th floor. We have a handful of people that would like to come up and talk about Kenny, probably more respectfully than I just did. But I know the city manager would like to come up, and I think he has a video for us to talk about. And manager, would you like to come make a few words?
Tom, we'll talk later about the city's naming policy and what you violated in doing that. Also, just so you know, the city that he could not pronounce in Oklahoma, Tom, it's Tulsa. All right, so I could see he doesn't know how that T goes, but anyway, what an event. I know when I retire, we can all fit in a very small conference room, but this is a great testimony and testament for a man who has left his mark on the city of Wichita. I've only been here 3 years, and yet I know so much about Ken and the legacy that he's left and that he's leaving behind. We're all in a safer community because of the work of Ken Landwehr, Lieutenant Landwehr. 35 years with the department, or over 35 years. 20 years in work that normally people are in and out of in about a 3 or 4 year period. But it really talks to his dedication to service, to the department, and to the city of Wichita and its residents and citizens. I'm here to do I didn't know we were going to start with a roast, but I'm actually here to do some of the more serious work. I represent the mayor in terms of an award that we give retirees when they leave the city, and I'll do that in a minute. But as I mentioned, I've only been here 3 years. There's someone who has worked with Ken for much longer who wanted to share some of his thoughts regarding his service before I gave this award. So with that, if we could put the video on.
I met Kenny when I was a community activist, long before I got into politics. At that point in time, I think Stone was the chief of police. You know, we had a lot of crime, gang activity going on. We had a lot of shootings and homicides that were happening, and so Kenny would come out and would talk with us in the community, in the neighborhoods, about what the police were doing and what had happened, particularly when it happened in the neighborhoods. The neighborhood wanted to know, you know, what was going on, what was happening. So that's when we first got a chance to meet Kenny. When he would come and he would talk with us, and even today, he would talk with you about the person or the crime that actually had been committed, but even he seemed to be compassionate about the people that committed the crime and their families and the people, the victims. I mean, it was just everyone as a whole, but then also, you know, in a much larger picture, you'd hear him talk about, you know, how certain things would make the city of Wichita look, and so he was always concerned in keeping those things on the forefront. About, you know, how certain things would make the city. Behind every good man there's a great woman, and in this particular case, I would say that there is no doubt about that. When you understand and you know what this man went through, and you know, out of his entire career, that says a lot right there for her to be able to stay there and to support. So this contribution that he has made is a family contribution that they've made to this city. He's made a huge difference. This contribution that he has made is a family. If you commit a crime in Wichita, Kenny Landwehr is going to find you, and that's going to happen. You can count on that. And they pretty much have held true to that record. And most often, you know that he has it figured out. Particularly, you know, when I come in, or I'm coming into the parking garage, and I see Kenny standing out there, and he's smoking his cigarette, and he's pacing back and forth. And in my mind, I look at him, I think, okay, something's getting ready to happen here. And sure enough, something does happen. There is no doubt that we're going to miss Kenny here. I mean, he's been here for many years. I mean, he's the guy he's the Dick Tracy of Wichita. He's the guy that you see walking through, doesn't draw a lot of attention to himself, and but you know who he is. And he's always very kind, very soft-spoken. You know, what can I do to help you? Has a sense of humor. So Kenny's he's really going to be missed here at City Hall. And when he announced that he was looking at retiring, it was just kind of okay, well, what are we going to do? You know, Kenny's leaving. So there'll be an absence there. But I think the advantage is that we do have is that he has an entire team that work for him, that he's mentored, he's trained these individuals, and Wichita will still have that reputation of being a safe community. And so I think we'll be fine. But, you know, if push comes to shove, and, you know, of course we know that Kenny's on the golf course and he loves to play golf. If push comes to shove, you know, and they tell us, hey, we have something, we just can't solve it, we have this homicide, that's no problem. Bob Layton and I just go to the top of the building, to the roof, and we turn on the Landwehr light, and Kenny will see it somewhere on the golf course, and he'll come and help us out. How much we do know. The Landwehr light, and I can't tell him how much I appreciate what he has done for this community. He's affected my life and many people around him. And I'd have to say he has made me a better person because he, just through talking to me, he's always gave me a different perspective. And when I think that things are so complicated, or, you know, trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do? There's no way to turn. Kenny has clearly demonstrated that, you know, it's not the end of the world. Step back from it, refocus, look at it, and then come back at it again. And you can work through that. So he's contributed a lot, you know, to me as an individual. I consider him a very close friend. I want him to enjoy his retirement, and I want him to know that if there's ever anything that I can possibly do to be able to help him, I'm only a phone call away. Just get the message to me, and I'll be there. And the other portion is, I know the citizens in the city of Wichita will be there for him at all times. So I want him to enjoy his vacation, enjoy his retirement, and remember, he has another family, and that is the citizens in the city of Wichita. Thanks, Kenny.
The mayor couldn't be with us today. He's in Washington, D.C., attending a meeting, but he did want to make sure that his thoughts were known to all of you and to Ken especially. With that, Chief, if you would join me. This is what the mayor normally would do. Ken, if you would please come up. This is the Distinguished Service Citation presented in recognition of dedicated and meritorious service rendered to the community and citizens of the city of Wichita, Kansas. During his 35 years of service with the city of Wichita Police Department, Mr. Landwehr has served as police officer, police detective, and police lieutenant. Signed by Mayor Carl Brewer, March 12, 2012. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Williams to make also some additional comments and I think for another award.
Before Chief Williams, will Captain Haga from the Sheriff's Department come up? I think she has a few words to say and maybe a presentation.
Good afternoon. Speaking on behalf of Sheriff Investigations, I want to say it's always been a pleasure to work with Lieutenant Landwehr. He is a true professional who has always been only a phone call away for us. He's always been really good about taking responsibility for those homicides who have found their way out to the county at the last minute. And we're hoping whoever takes his place will continue to have that working relationship with us. So in all seriousness, over the years, every sheriff's deputy who has come through Sheriff Investigations has been impacted by Kenny Landwehr, and we are all better for it. And in appreciation, we'd like to present to him this picture of the Law Enforcement Memorial. Thank you very much.
Deb Barnett is here today from the United States Attorney's Office. Where'd you get to, Deb?
Well, I'd like to begin just by saying that Mr. Grissom couldn't be here today, but he wanted me to tell you all how much he respects Ken Landwehr and the work that he's done in this community, and he recognizes how important the work that he's done is to this community during the last 35 years. Now you're going to hear from Deb Barnett, who's known Ken Landwehr for 20 years. I got to know him by working with him directly and also with the detectives that I worked with on homicide cases when I was at the DA's office. I can't tell you how much over the years I've always appreciated Ken's friendship and his support. You know, as a prosecutor, it means a lot when the officers that you have the privilege of working with really support you in what you're doing and try to help you through the rough times. And anybody that's worked with me knows that I tend to have my highs and my lows, and Ken was always there when I was high, and then when I was low, he was there to help me get up. And so I always appreciate the fact that he used a sense of humor to make me laugh. He gave me his shoulder to cry on. He never complained when I got makeup or mascara all over his shoulder, and believe me, I did that a couple of times. And he always came to the courtroom when he knew I was having a particularly tough time. He just showed up on his own to offer me words of encouragement and support. And I will never forget that for as long as I practice and as long as I'm here in the community. Now, if Mr. Grissom were here, he would have brought a really nice plaque or some sort of, really honorable gift to give to Ken today, but since Deb Barnett's here in front of you, I have something else to give to Ken. When he's out there in the community and he's not wearing his suit and tie anymore, I want him to have something that sets him apart from everybody in the community. Go ahead. as his former, and I will continue to be one of his attorneys, the only counsel I would give him about that is that he should wear it with pride, but probably not in the city of Wichita. So I wish you the best. Take care.
District Attorney Nola Fulston.
I have to tell you, Kenny, you knew for the last 2 months I've been in a cast, and I actually put high heels on and a suit to come and see you today and to describe a relationship that's gone back a few seasons. So don't give me any crap about the tennis shoes. I have had the honor, privilege, and absolute pleasure of working with the Wichita Police Department for 24 years. And I am retiring as well. So Kenny is going to try and teach me how to golf. Maybe yes, maybe no. I want to look back very, very far back. Even on vacation, and we all met one time out in California. Cindy and Ken, we had the most wonderful times having dinner, engaging, talking about our lives, and you get to be close. And then when James came along, that was just I got to see a picture of you, James, every single new photo, because your dad loves you and he loves your mom so much, and he's so invested in you. And he brought that same kind of investment into the police department. When I first started out, it was a scary proposition being a woman, being the district attorney, and walking into a situation where a woman had never held that office. And it was a rough start, working with some of the officers that were kind of grumbled about, oh, this chick DA and this and that. But when Kenny began to work on our cases, when we first met in the laboratory and I'd seen him around, his proficiency was incredible. His personality was the best. He was so much fun. We enjoyed having him with us. It was like having a brother. And then as his career progressed and he became a lieutenant in the Homicide Division, he almost lives at my office because he is there all the time. But he has done so much for this community by training, teaching, educating, and collaborating with all of you. And I'm looking around at some of the most wonderful detectives and police officers and prosecutors, and yes, even the media. He has been what I would consider the most stalwart individual. He has made all of us fall in love with the police department. There's a lot of prosecutors around the country that just do not get along with the police, that don't have very many nice things to say. But I can say one thing, that the collaborative efforts of the Wichita Police Department and the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office have been greatly improved by the stellar accomplishments of every individual with whom we have worked. But there is one single individual, and that is my friend Ken, that has stood out as a tremendous asset, good friend, kid brother, and absolute educator for me and for my staff. We have spent, unfortunately, as Cindy knows, we have spent nights in the mud. We have spent nights in the snow. We've spent nights digging. We've spent nights at different kinds of scenes. And every time that we've been together, he has been and remains the consummate professional, and one that this community has recognized as a leader, a teacher, a mentor, a father, a husband, and an all-around good person. But on top of all that, Kenny is my hero. And I didn't come bearing gifts today. I've already given him his hero shirt, and I hope he wears it a lot so that he can remind his wife when she tells him to do the chores that maybe he doesn't have to, because he's a very important hero. Thank you all, and we all love you, and we love you, Kenny.
Kenny's mic'd up. It's going a lot better than I thought it would go. We'll close with a couple of chiefs of police. First of all, the chief that had the insight and wisdom to hire Kenny, Chief Lemunion, is here somewhere. Did he get away? Nope, there he is. Chief?
Thank you very much. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here to recognize Kenny for his dedication and service. And I'd like to tell everyone publicly now is the reason that that file is so thin is that when I left here 20 years ago, I purged his file and took it with me. I knew he was going to need some help. So, Kenny's always been a star in his own right in terms of what he brought to the Wichita Police Department. As you sit in the chief's office for years and you see officers come through, you can identify those who are going to rise to the top. And despite of what you might have recognized early on with Kenny, he was certainly one of those. I remember when that special order went out that I put out that was simply you're going to be assigned to the chief's office. Those were for special investigations. And we handpicked, with the help of my deputy chiefs and other command people, certain key individuals that we thought had potential to assist us with issues that were facing us. And one of those issues, obviously, in those days was BTK. We were looking for a group of individuals who could bring all this mass of information together for us in hopes of solving the case, number one, but if we couldn't solve the case, certainly putting it into such order that the next investigator that picked it up could simply just march on down the road, and that's what we did. Kenny was one of those individuals who were selected. But what you didn't know is during that investigation that was lovingly dubbed by the news media Ghostbusters, it required, we found a suspect, and this suspect looked like pretty good. He could possibly be someone we want to look further at. But we had to get someone to go undercover. This individual worked as a baker in a huge, huge bakery in Hutchinson, Kansas. So we made Kenny an undercover officer, and he was a bread inspector. I'm sure he remembers that. He didn't know anything about anything, and I remember him coming in saying, "Chief, I don't know anything about it." I said, "Well, make it up." I said, they don't know anything either, so just handle it. He did a good job. It turned out, obviously, that was not our suspect, but he was a suspect in some other things. Kenny's always been on the front line. I remember years ago when we first started our relationship with the Wichita Police Department, we started a relationship with Special Olympics back in the 70s, in the late 70s and on into the 80s. Kenny, being a bachelor in those days, had other things to do, but he stepped forward. He was a volunteer. He helped us bring the Special Olympics movement to the Wichita Police Department. And as we move forward through that, he has been one of the individuals that we now have the ability to go worldwide. I have had the privilege for the last 30 years to deal with law enforcement literally around the world. And the Wichita Police Department, because of Kenny and others like him, starting in Special Olympics, but because of the national notoriety that Kenny has brought to our department here a reputation that is second to none in the world, literally. I had the opportunity to be in Calgary, Canada earlier this year and meet with law enforcement officers from every state in the Union, from 45 other countries, and it always comes down to BTK, Kenny Landwehr, and the investigation and the capabilities of the Wichita Police Department. So it speaks well for our record worldwide. Other things Kenny's talked about here, or been talked about, is his golfing ability. When I was the chief, I got an invitation to go to Kansas City and play in the George Brett Celebrity Charity Golf Tournament. If anyone's ever seen me play golf, you obviously can tell I need some serious help. So I looked around, and here was Kenny. We got there, we were slated to be in like the last 4 or 5 teams, but 2 of the people had canceled, one in George Brett's team and one right behind him. So when we got there, Kenny got the pleasure of playing with George Brett, and he beat him. So I thought that speaks well for the Wichita Police Department. I don't have any plaques or anything to give to Kenny other than the fact, two things. Number one, Sharon said to tell you she sends her love. And secondly, the Wichita Police Department is losing a key ingredient to what our department means, the professionalism, but what he's left behind is the mentoring and the individuals who will pick up the slack. Kenny Landwehr stands tall in the stars of all the department that have come before me, after me, and will come after him. He's at the top of the list. And all I have to say to Kenny is I love him very much, and I get a hug. Thank you.
I'd like to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's bittersweet occasion. The fact that we're losing one of our own that has decided to retire after so many years. You've heard a lot of comments made by previous speakers. I'd like to recognize former KBI Director Larry Welch. Would you please stand and be recognized, sir? Kenny so eloquently reminded me that 7 years ago, on the 26th day of February 2005, this room was to the same level as far as being packed when we announced the fact that BTK had been arrested. When I look at the commitment and the courage that Mr. Welch demonstrated, when he assigned personnel, knowing that he was already short, he assigned personnel members to the task force and didn't blink an eye. And I'm always grateful because he didn't have to do that. So thank you very much. You know, behind every great man, as the mayor said, is a great lady. I can tell you that Kenny is a man that loves his wife, loves his son, loves his family. We owe his wife as well as his son and his family a debt of gratitude, because when you get those phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, he rolls out of bed, he takes time to put on that suit. I've yet to see him show up to any homicide scene without a suit on. He reminds me of Columbo. He's a Columbo of the 21st century. And I watch him walk around methodically, you know, try to talk to Kenny. He'll look at me like, okay, Kenny, I'm going to be cool. I'm going to let you do your thing. It's like, okay, I'm running this show, Chief. You ain't running it. You wait your turn. So Todd, where are you at? We're going to have a long talk after this so you can understand how the cow ate the cabbage. But in all seriousness, as we've heard a lot of speakers before us, when I think in terms of Kenny Landwehr over the last, particularly 12 years as chief of the city of Wichita, there's been several cases that come to mind. Within 9 months, we had a two quadruple homicide within this community. At this time, when one of them involved the Carr brothers, we did a press conference here in this room at that time. Kenny, as well as so many others that were part of that investigation, eventually resulted in the apprehension of those two individuals that killed 4 members of our community, as well as the quadruple before that resulted in the arrest. And so that gives you an idea of the dedication not only that Kenny provides to this community, but also the dedication of the men and women that work with him, because there again, Kenny will tell you that the cases that we've been able to solve wasn't because of him, but rather because he provided the leadership and he got out of the way and said, do what we got to do to get things accomplished. And to me, that's what a leader is all about, is being able to provide the resources, provide a sense of direction, and have the patience, the professionalism, and the commitment to allow his team to get the job done. Cindy, you've been part of that team. Even though you haven't been there at the scenes with us, we know that wherever you went, as well as James, you were within Kenny's heart, you were within Kenny's mind. He always checked on his family, and when that phone rung, there's a certain tone of the ring that has James's identity. So whenever James called Daddy, we know Kenny's gone. Kenny's going to see James. But anyway, I just want to say thank you, Kenny. You've been a humble, you've been the consummate leader in this community, you've been dedicated, you've given yourself, and as the plaques say, you have been the voice for the silent, and we're going to miss you. So on behalf of the men and women of the Wichita Police Department, it gives me great honor to present you with your retirement badge.
Thank you all for coming. Since Janet Johnson didn't write this speech, it's not going to be very good. Because as you know, she's the only one that could write a speech that makes me look good, usually. So I just want to say that I feel very fortunate with my career. Had a lot of fun. I was very lucky on all the cases that I was assigned, that we took over. It just happened to be that a lot of those cases came when I was up on rotation, and that's the nice thing about it. I want to first start, and I want to thank my family. My dad and mom, who brought me into this world here in Wichita, Kansas, where I always stayed, grew up, and maybe that's why it was so important to me. My brother David, Brenda, always with their support, and their entire family, that always were there with encouraging words and help and all that. But mainly I want to thank one lady, my wife Cindy. She's been at my side through thick and thin, always with love and support. She brought into my life her daughter Holly, her family, 2 grandkids, Megan and Miles, that are always there and give you something to actually live for. And then, of course, there's my son James, who I'm so proud of all his accomplishments, and he is a source of pride every day of my life. And together, all of this is what probably kept me around for so long, with their support and everything else that came around. There's lots of people on the outside of the city that I need to thank. NOLA, the District Attorney's Office, all of their assistance in helping us put the bad guys away, going through those cases. Lots of long hours, like Nola said, but always being able to put the bad guys away. And even before, when I was a detective on the cases that we worked with the District Attorney's Office, around the state government, of course, KBI, I always had a good friend. And the director, Mr. Welch, he was a friend of my uncle's, Ernie. That's how I got to meet him, and his wife Shirley, and his support has always assisted us in this department. FBI, ATF, DEA, ICE, all of them have always came to our help when we needed them. Anytime we asked, we've always gotten the support, and that's the good thing about law enforcement all the way around. U.S. Attorney's Office that listens to what we say and shows us a way possibly to charge cases that we might not get enough time in state court. They've always been there for us as well. And all the other agencies, Sheriff's Department. But inside the city itself, I've always had, from the administration on down, from city managers, mayor, the council, I've always supported this department, in my opinion, throughout my career. When we needed something, we always got it. And then the department itself, from the chiefs that I've served under, the deputy chiefs I've served under, and the captains. They always listened. They always directed me in a good direction to hopefully solve the investigations. Some of them it took a lot of faith to have. As DC pointed out, it might take a while every once in a while to solve a case. 20, 25 years, what the hell. But we stick with it, and everybody supports us when we get there. The staff was has always been behind me, in my opinion. I want to thank the detectives and my bosses before that taught me at a young age on how to be an investigator, showed me what to do, stood by me, helped me through those, and I tried to remember everything they taught me and to go forward with that information and to remember that we're out there to get the truth, and that's what it is. I also want to thank lieutenants and detectives on the 6th floor that have always been there. They've taken, helped me on almost every case we've ever had. Whenever, again, we ask any detective up on the 6th floor, they've always helped. Any lieutenant, captain, they've always been there for us. But lastly, I'd like to thank especially the detectives that worked with me. They've been assigned to homicide. They did all the work. Lieutenants don't work for a living, okay? We just don't do it. Those detectives did their job. They made me look good. They made the department look good. And they deserve all the credit for every success that I've had and as the department has had, in my opinion. I cannot thank them enough. Well, now we're going to start a new chapter. We're going to try to break 70 by the time I'm 70. If you're not a golfer, you'll have to ask somebody about that. But we will try our best. We'll get better at putting. And hopefully the DC will ask me out to play with him again. Since we got beat the last time, he might trash me and go after somebody else, but we'll still take him on whenever we can. So without anything else, I thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you around, hopefully on the golf course.